All right, welcome to our SEADLink Member Spotlight. I have Michelle Beecher here. She is an active member who provides outstanding influence and contributions to the Mindful Seed community. And she hosted our first ever book talk last month.
Yay.
So she may look familiar. As a thanks, we're featuring her in this month's SEADLink Member Spotlight. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, thank
Um,
you. Hello, Lauren. How are you today?
Good. Yeah. I was wondering if you could start by just sharing briefly who you are, give us a sense of what you do.
Okay. Well, I've been in education for over 20 years. I am a single mom. That is very important to me. And currently, I am a full time instructor at Great Basin College, and I'm located on the Pahrump campus, which is in southern Nevada, for those of you who do not know. And I teach the ELAD classes, which is the English Language Acquisition and Development classes, to our education majors. I also supervise student teachers and I advise students that are in the education program.
Awesome. Yeah. So, kind of diving in, what made you decide to become an educator, Michelle?
There's a whole bunch of things, but I think really probably one of the biggest influences was my grandmother. She taught fifth grade until she was 70.
Wow.
And she really didn't want to retire, but she recognized that there was a lot of up and coming teachers that needed a spot, and so she kind of wanted to bow out gracefully, but she volunteered for years after she retired from teaching too. So I think she probably was one of the biggest influences.
That's awesome. I love it.
Mhm.
70. Is that your goal till retire at 70?
Well, honestly, though, what I'm doing right now at GBC, it's not like a job. So I would go for till I'm 70 or maybe even later.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then how did you learn about SEL?
So I think like not probably subconsciously, like social emotional learning has always kind of been a part of my life. I can just remember growing up, my parents and my grandma, who was a teacher, always saying, you always need to be kind to others. You need to remember, no matter what you're going through, there's somebody else that's going through something too. So, just lend a kind hand, lend an ear, or just be positive. Be a little more positive when you're talking to people. So I think that was probably informally. Formally, it was actually a year ago, with Deb and Michelle. They had reached out through NSHE, which is the Nevada State Higher Ed. And so I got in touch with them and I learned a little bit about Mindful Seed.
That's awesome. Yeah. Um, Going back to kind of your teaching career, what have you enjoyed most about it?
There's so much. I think really it's early on, it was just about teaching and helping those students that maybe had a little bit harder time than others. I really was always big on developing relationships with your students and with the families because I found that, a lot of times when students were acting up in the classroom, a lot of people were saying, oh, they're just a bad kid, or, oh, they just want attention and they're going to keep doing it. There was always a reason for that bad behavior, and it was a need that wasn't being met. And so when I got to know the students and the families, many times I was able to form a partnership with the parents or guardians that were at home and just help them work through what was going on so that their child, you know, felt like they meant something and somebody cared about them.
For sure. Yeah. And on the flip side, what would you say has been your biggest challenge in your career?
Um, well, it seems like it changes, like from year to year. I think though one of the biggest challenges for me, well, in the beginning and still right now too, with teaching teachers or students who are going to be teachers, is having people realize that students don't act out on purpose. Like they don't just do it because they're bad. Students don't not master the standards because they can't. like they really, really can't. It's because they just aren't making those connections. They're not understanding. There's not somebody who's there to work with them and, to say, hey, you can do this, you can do this. So I think one of the biggest struggles has been when you're working in a school and you have a grade level team, having those teachers who don't see the same thing that you do, and still keeping that positive work relationship with them.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other SEADLink members can relate to that and
Yeah.
that idea. I guess kind of similar, if you go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice before entering education, what would it be?
Before I was in education,
Yeah.
probably give yourself more grace. Don't be quite so hard, and really just live in the moment. Think about what's going on right then and there and make it the best you can.
Yeah. I had a motto for part of my life. I probably should go back to it. Be here now, just be present.
Yes.
I feel like
Hmm.
that's a very similar concept.
Mhm.
Yeah. How have SEL and Mindful Seed helped you in your career?
I think just being more mindful. And when I'm working with students, whether it was the littles when I was teaching pre-K and was a cat herder, and when I'm teaching college students, it's really just about taking the time to let them know that you believe in them and that you're there to support them. There's many times now that I'm doing Zoom meetings with students up until 9 o'clock at night, because they're just not understanding something or they got behind and they're afraid that they can't get caught up. So it's just making the time and let them know you can do this and let's just figure out a way.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess along that similar thought, what topics would you like to talk about more with your fellow SeedLink members?
I don't know if it's so much, Lauren, about a topic, a
Okay.
different topic, I guess, but more just about the whole concept, of being mindful and being positive and taking time, for yourself and in that moment, just finding more ways to do it and finding more ways to help other people realize it's not just one more thing you have to do, like someone's telling you to do, it's one more thing you should do.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, to kind of wrap this up, my fun question. Imagine a day without work, the internet, or any other obligations. What would you do, Michelle?
I love to cook. I've taken cooking classes in person, in restaurants, online, from chefs around the world. So I would cook and I would invite you and anybody else from Seed out there, the Seed community that wants to come on over and I'll feed you.
That sounds like it's going to be our next event. No.
There you go.
Do you have a type of cuisine that you prefer to cook?
It really changes. I've gone through phases where I've liked Italian food. I did visit Italy. I went to
Mm.
Florence and Venice and Pisa, and I loved learning how to make pasta with them, and just their Italian food. It's so different than American Italian food. But right now it's probably more Indian or Greek food.
Mm. All
That's
that sounds amazing. I would eat any of that. Wow, well,
Ooh,
it sounds like we have to plan that sometime in the future,
yeah.
but, in the meantime, thanks so much for sharing with us, Michelle, and for being a part of Mindful Seed.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Alright, have a good day.
Thank you. You too, Lauren.